This is the first day in our journey together to living this amazing, blessed life. I know you will never be the same again. I know that your life will be radically transformed and you'll begin to notice a difference even after a few days. Well, let me begin by saying you are loved. You are unconditionally accepted in the love of Jesus. It's so simple, but yet there is no discovery, knowledge, or wisdom more important in life. Nothing compares to believing or knowing or being acutely aware in your heart of God's love for you through Jesus. Paul prayed in Ephesians, I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power together with all the Lord's holy people to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge. The key to healing is in knowing the love of Christ. The answer to having all your needs met and living in abundance is in knowing the love of Christ. Living your best and most dynamic life begins with a deep revelation of God's love for you. When we know or are acutely aware of the love that God has for us, we are transformed. When we truly accept God's agape love without restriction, condition, or hesitation, then a new belief is formed in our hearts. We will not only expect good things to happen in our lives, but we become like magnets for every blessing and favor of God. In this performance-oriented world, it's so unnatural for us to accept that we don't have to do or say anything to be loved. Our minds naturally are drawn to think that favor and blessings have to be earned. We instinctively wonder how we could ever be loved without first proving our worth. Sure, we may all have some form of intellectual knowledge of being loved, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm referring to a deep knowing in the very depth of your heart, the kind of knowledge that is unshaken or unmoved when pressures and attacks come, because you know beyond uncertainty that you're loved and therefore secure in Jesus. I'm not sure what you're dealing with right now. It could be a health issue. It could involve your family or have to do with your finances. It could be a personal matter. It could be depression. It could be so many different things. But I do know the answer is found in having the eyes of your heart steadfast on God's great love for you through Christ. God is agape love. If God is love, everything created was born out of love. It was love that propelled God to send His Son to the world. It was love that caused Jesus to multiply the 5 loaves of bread and the 2 fish and feed more than 5,000 men, women, and children. Love was the source behind every miracle that Jesus performed. In fact, love is the very foundation behind all of creation. It's the reason why you were born. When the serpent came into the Garden of Eden, he deceived Adam and Eve to question the quality of the unconditional love of God. He suggested that they needed to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil to be like God. But gaining knowledge of good and evil brought about insecurity in God's love. It suggested that love had to be earned by being good and avoiding evil. This resulted in fear. This fear expressed itself through shame or feelings of not being good enough. It led to sin, sickness, and death, and is the root of all that ails humanity. The devil, who's also the accuser, has only one method: to accuse according to the knowledge of good and evil. Whenever we accept the accusation, we become less aware of God's love. And the less we are aware of God's love, the more sickness, sin, and death is given the opportunity to control us. But there is a way to freedom. Jesus has made a way for us to continually walk in the revelation of the love of God. Unlike in the Old Covenant, when the world was blind to the true nature of God, the love of God has now been made apparent to us through the cross. John said, "In this the love of God was manifested toward us, that God sent His only begotten Son into the world, that we might live through him. And then John continued, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. John explains that love is not that we love God, but that he loves us and gave his Son for us. And then he explains that perfect love, love that has completed its work, is in knowing or perceiving in our hearts and believing in the love of God manifested through Jesus on the cross. In other words, John is saying that when we believe and are acutely aware of the love of God in our hearts, then the love of God has completed its work in us and all fear is gone. And that fear, the root of sin, sickness, and all that ails humanity is gone. Then sickness, sin, and all that ails us will also leave. If you remove the poisonous root, then you will remove the poisonous fruit. When the poisonous fruit is removed, then only good fruit will grow.